Our next Make Your Mark talk is by 2017 Tillman Scholar, Dr. Maya Herzog. After 9 years in the United States Navy, Maya returned home to study biology and began seeing connections between animal behaviors and humans suffering from PTSD. Maya parlayed that connection into a Ph.D. in quantitative biology at the University of Texas this year. In her talk, she'll reveal what she discovered and how it could change the way we view mental health. Dr. Maya Herzog.
I want you to imagine walking into the lobby of an office and seeing a person sitting there waiting to be treated. And then you look to the other side of the office and you see an elephant and a beetle also sitting in the other chairs waiting to be seen. We'll get back to that in a moment. For the past 6 years, I've studied a phenomenon known as the loser effect. The loser effect is the high probability that once an individual loses at a traumatic event or conflict, that they will continue to lose subsequent events. We see this in animals all the time, when they aggressively compete for resources like food, territory, access to mates. The winners, they get all the rewards, but the losers, the defeated, they exhibit a spectrum of symptoms, behaviors, submissiveness, isolation, anxiety-like behavior. They experience high levels of stress, increased heart rate, irregular heart rate, damage to circadian rhythm, decreased sex drive, inability to feel pleasure, and in many cases, a complete and total shutdown of normal activity. And when you think about it, it never ceases to amaze me how similar these behaviors in animals are to people who are diagnosed with depression. A study in 2009 found common points of view among mental health patients who receive antidepressant treatment regarding the detrimental social effects that they experience just by being associated with having a mental illness. The results of this study suggest that individuals receiving treatment purposely restrict disclosing that they have depression, even to their friends and family and to just other people, because they're afraid of that stigma that hangs over mental health. It's too prevalent. They just simply don't want to be associated with something that could bring negative attention to them. But this was a 2009 study, and a lot has happened since then. And I think it's fair to say that we've grown towards a more tolerant society overall. And yet, in 2020, the National Institute of Health shows that there was an estimated 52.9 million adults in the United States that suffered from a mental illness, and 24 million people received services. In other words, almost 1/4 of the population of adults 18 and older suffered from mental health, and less than half of them received treatment. Okay, so let's think about this. Why is there a stigma for humans that suffer from these same behaviors that we see in animals, but there's no stigma with them? When elephants experience a death in the herd, they actually grieve as a group. And oftentimes, the close relative remains behind because they're too despondent to continue with the migration. Male flower beetles also exhibit a very well-defined loser effect. When they fight aggressively for mates and they lose, they go into isolation, they retreat, they avoid contact with others, they become submissive to other males. And in most cases, they do shut down normal activity for a period of time. I began studying animal behavior as an undergraduate, working with insect systems. And then I accepted a research assistant position in a neuropsychology clinic working with combat veterans and active duty members who sustained traumatic brain injuries from blast exposures. So they were evaluated for their mental health. So I've had a chance to participate in studies, behavior studies with insects and animals and with people. And as a scientist, I started to see some observations that I had my own questions for. You see, I see everything through the guise of evolution. That's how things make sense to me. That's how life makes sense. And the best way that I know how to start looking at the questions that I started to have was through the molecular level. I wanted to know what the evolutionary reason for some of these behaviors I was seeing, what was the evolutionary reason for it? I wanted to find out specifically, is there a genetic component related to the mental health behaviors that I observed? And I also wanted to get paid for finding the answers. And so I decided to get a Ph.D. And during the time, I developed a model that could elucidate genetic markers and cellular pathways associated with the behaviors that are both in loser effect and in depression. And let me share with you what I found. The cellular pathways that are associated with loser effect and depression are the same in humans, in other mammals, and in insects. Exciting, right? The genetic markers that I found were also very similar across these groups. So this means that there is a genetic signature that coincides with depression. This means that in that scenario at the beginning, the beetle, the elephant, and the human could actually sit in an office waiting to be treated for depression with no stigma attached. We need to consider those discoveries that are across disciplines. We need to make a better effort to merge medical treatment with scientific discoveries. I'd like to continue using the model that I developed to sample other systems, other animal systems. I need to gather more evidence, and I want to build the numbers. I want to see how conserved these behaviors really are across species. And I'd really love for you all to join me. I grew up with a mom who battled depression every day, and she still does. You see, when someone suffers from mental health, they don't suffer by themselves, but everyone around them that's close to them also has some effect of it. It's time to accept that being depressed, suffering from chronic depression, and needing mental health treatment and seeking it out, it's not a choice. It's not something that we can just tell people to get over. It's biology.